Last month I took a job at the Rusty Tap. I had just finished bartending school and wanted to save up for my own bar. At first everything felt normal. The place was lively during the day, but when night fell, things got weird. As the clock struck midnight, the atmosphere shifted. I felt it. My heart raced. One night I walked to the bathroom after closing. That's when I saw it. Messages scrawled on the wall in what looked like ketchup. It made no sense. I laughed it off to my coworkers, but they just stared. Their lack of reaction chilled me. Something was definitely off. The days turned to weeks, and odd patrons started appearing. They came in late, sitting in dark corners. They ordered drinks with names I'd never heard. One night, I leaned in to listen. I caught phrases like, "the last shift," and "it comes to collect." My stomach churned. Their eyes felt wrong, like they were studying me. I tried to focus on my work. Cleaning glasses and wiping down the bar helped keep me busy. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that those shadowy figures were always watching. I'd glance up and find their eyes fixed on me. I wiped my sweaty hands on my apron, trying to calm my pounding heart. One night, a group of 3 entered just before last call. They huddled together, whispering low so I couldn't hear. Their eyes darted around the room, landing on me. I served them their unusual drinks, but they barely looked at me. Their faces were blank. I was unsettled, but I tried to ignore it. That's when one of them said something I couldn't shake. "Don't break the rule." My heart sank. What rule? I told myself it was just bar chatter, but I felt something dark creeping in. I started to question what would happen if I did break whatever rule they were talking about. Would they let me go? Or was something worse waiting for me? As I approached my last shift, anxiety twisted in my stomach. I heard the laughter one night, hollow and eerie. The patrons turned their gazes toward me, unsettling smiles splitting their faces. I was scared. I poured a drink, my hands trembling. I wanted to run, but I felt trapped. Shadows under the tables seemed darker somehow. Just when I thought I was at my breaking point, one of the shadowy patrons asked, "Are you ready for your last shift, Jake?" I froze. Nobody else was in the pub. The walls were closing in. My heart raced. I couldn't tell if I was about to faint or scream. I glanced around the empty space, but all I saw were those figures, still watching me, their smiles growing wider. I don't know what awaited me, but I was out of time. The pub was ready to collect on whatever promise I had unknowingly made. I felt the weight of the air shift around me. Those shadowy figures stirred. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body felt glued to the ground. "Jake," the voice continued, a smooth, chilling whisper that made my skin crawl. "You must understand the rules." I blinked, trying to respond, but my throat felt dry. "What rules?" I finally stammered, forcing the question out. The figures leaned in, their expressions unchanging, yet filled with a hunger I couldn't understand. One of them, a tall man with slicked-back hair, stepped forward. His eyes glimmered like shards of glass. "You don't know, do you?" he said, almost teasing. "You thought this job was just about pouring drinks and cleaning glasses?" He walked closer, invading my personal space. "No, it's much more than that." I took a step back, but it felt like stepping into quicksand. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The laughter from earlier echoed in my mind, reverberating against the walls. "Each drink carries a price," another patron chimed in. "You've served the wrong drinks. You've broken the rule." Her smile widened, revealing unnaturally sharp teeth. "And now, it's time to pay." Panic surged through me. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't mean to." I stumbled backward, desperately searching for an exit. The room blurred, the figures closing in around me. I could hear the sound of my frantic heartbeat drowning out everything else. Then the tall man raised his hand, halting the advance of the others. "Your fate has not yet been sealed," he said, taking a step back. "You might avoid the consequences if you follow the second rule." His face held a strange mix of pity and amusement. "What is it?" I pressed, the fear turning my words into a rush. You have to serve one last drink. It must be one of the forgotten. He smiled again, but this time it felt like a deranged grimace. And then you'll understand. What's a forgotten drink? I demanded, piecing together the fragments of a plan in my mind. The room shifted, suddenly feeling like it could swallow me whole. I felt dizzy, but I knew I needed to find out. Where can I find the ingredients? I asked, my hope clawing through dread. The patrons paused, exchanging glances. You'll know when the time comes, Jake, the tall man said. But remember, mixing the forgotten isn't just a task, it's a decision. I was at the edge of a chasm, and for the first time, I realized I had to jump. I looked at the shadowed figures, their faces blank yet expectant. As their eyes glimmered with anticipation, I felt something click inside me. With a deep breath, I turned and raced to the back of the bar, determined to find what I needed. I didn't know if I would make it back out, not before the night claimed another soul. And then I heard the laughter again, echoing down the hall, and I shuddered. Whatever I had to find, it wouldn't come without a price. The corridor stretched out before me, dark and devoid of life. I felt the pulse of uncertainty in my chest as I hurried past bottles lining the shelves, their contents glowing dimly under the flickering lights. I didn't have time to hesitate. I needed to find the ingredients for a forgotten drink, whatever that was. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the laughter kept echoing in my head like a warning. The tall man's words echoed too. It's a decision. What did he mean by that? I pushed through the panic, focusing on the rickety shelves piled high with dusty bottles and jars. I scanned the labels, looking for anything that might offer a clue. There was a bottle labeled Night's Shadow, another named Bitter Remembrance, and one more marked simply as Lost Time. It felt wrong, unsettling. I reached for Lost Time, thinking it might be the one. But as my fingers grazed the glass, I recoiled, the memory of the tall man's chilling gaze flashing in my mind. Focus, Jake, I whispered to myself. I needed something concrete. That's when I spotted a small notebook wedged between two crates. My heart raced as I pulled it out, dusting off the cover. The spine was cracked and aged, but I was desperate to know what it contained. I opened it carefully, and as I flipped through the pages filled with scrawled notes, I felt a spark of hope. There were recipes, detailed notes for various drinks, but most of them were scribbled out or marked with warnings. Do not serve on the first week of autumn, one note read. Another page caught my eye. The forgotten mix, a balance of sorrow, memory, and desire. It felt like the answer I needed. But just as recognition surged within me, a chill crept down my spine. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the corridor. I could feel eyes watching me, an invisible weight pressing against my back. I glanced over my shoulder, but the shadows clung to their corners, silent and imposing. Make up your mind, a voice hissed from the darkness. I froze, instinctively clutching the notebook to my chest. Decisions have to be made, Jake. Suddenly, the door at the far end of the corridor creaked open, revealing a figure obscured in shadows. My stomach churned. This was no time to freeze. Heart pounding, I turned back to the shelves. I needed to choose quickly. I could feel the weight of the air shifting around me again. In that moment, I knew I had to act. I reached for Night's Shadow before my mind could argue. I had to trust my gut. I grabbed the bottle, careful not to look back at the door. I felt the pull of the figures out there, waiting for my next move. As I rushed back toward the bar, I stole one last glance at the notebook. But then, something caught my eye, an illustration of the forgotten drinks with a note I hadn't seen before. One sip, and you may recover what's lost, but be warned. Truths uncovered may be worse than your fears. I stopped dead in my tracks, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. What was I really getting into? And what did I still need to face? Just then, the lights flickered off, plunging me into darkness. I stood in complete darkness, the oppressive silence wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I couldn't even see my own hands. Panic clawed at my throat. Just a moment ago, I had been surrounded by bottles and jars, a glimmer of hope in my hand. Now, all of that was swallowed by the void, and the laughter echoed like a ghost in my ears. I took a breath and forced myself to listen instead of freak out. The sound of scurrying footsteps echoed somewhere far away. Or were they close? I couldn't tell. My heart raced again. I squinted, willing my eyes to adjust, but the darkness refused to give in. "Stay calm, Jake," I muttered. "You can do this." I had to remember the details from the notebook. What did I need for the drink? I tried to recall the balance of sorrow, memory, and desire. But my thoughts were jumbled. Then, a faint glow flickered in the distance, illuminating the edge of the corridor. I was drawn to it, desperate for light. I moved forward slowly, my footsteps quiet and careful. Each step felt like a gamble. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking. Or someone. The light flickered again, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. I reached for the bottle, the cold glass a comfort in my hand. Night's shadow wasn't just a name. I could feel it content with the aura around me. Suddenly the flickering stopped, and the light blazed back on, revealing the same figure from before standing arrestingly still at the other end of the corridor. I froze, my heart hammering. The man's face was obscured, as if wrapped in a dark veil, but I felt those eyes boring into mine. "I believe you have something that belongs to me," he said, his voice smooth as silk, but with an edge of threat. "That bottle will bring answers you're not ready for." I tightened my grip on Night's shadow. "I'm not giving it to you." He took a step forward, the shadows shifting around him. I could sense the distance closing, and I felt my resolve wavering. Yet if I gave in, what would happen to me? He seemed to feed on that uncertainty. "Why are you here?" I shouted, the words almost breaking the silence. My voice shocked even me. "What do you want?" He smiled then, slow and calculating, revealing just the slightest hint of white teeth. "You have to understand, Jake. Truth is a currency in these corridors, and if you're going to seek the forgotten drink, you will learn that truth comes with a price." A cold chill washed over me as he spoke. The flickering lights cast his features in and out of focus, making him appear even more otherworldly. He was no stranger to danger. Just when I thought my breath would fail me, the environment shifted again. The lights buzzed, flickered once more, and then went dark again. I felt myself staggering backward, the weight of uncertainty pressing down. And then it clicked. The last part of the notebook flashed in my mind. Truths uncovered may be worse than your fears. In that moment, I realized I had very little time left. I had to move, and fast. Before I could second-guess myself, I turned and sprinted down the corridor, my heart pounding in my ears, hoping against hope that I could escape the shadows that threatened to devour me whole. Just as I was nearing the end, I heard a voice echoing softly behind me. "Don't think you can run from what's already found you." And then I saw it, a door half ajar. One last chance. Without hesitation, I rushed toward it, fully aware that my decision may lead me deeper into a darkness I didn't yet understand. As I pushed through the door, the hinges creaked loudly, as if warning me against my choice. I stumbled into a dimly lit room, and the sudden change in atmosphere made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The air felt thick, charged, like something was waiting. I took a moment to gather myself. My breath came in short gasps, but I couldn't afford to panic now. The room was lined with shelves, and bottles, similar to Night's shadow, filled the space, their contents glowing eerily in the low light. I was surrounded by potions, elixirs, and endless possibilities, or maybe just endless dangers. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice a whisper that echoed back to me, swallowed by the shadows. No answer came, only the sound of dripping water, rhythmic and unnerving. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. A sudden movement in the corner of my eye caught my attention. I turned quickly, only to find nothing but an empty chair. Still, something felt off. It was as if the room was breathing, shifting ever so slightly with each passing second. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a book lying open on a table. It was worn, pages yellowed, and the cover was too frayed to read. I approached cautiously, my heart still racing. I felt drawn to it, as if the book was calling me. My fingers brushed the cover, and I pulled it closer. Inside, strange symbols danced across the pages, alongside sketches of mythical beings. A shiver ran through me as I turned the pages. Then, there it was, a drawing of the drink I was seeking, the forgotten elixir. Below it, a warning. Beware the price of truth. Just then, the door I entered through slammed shut, plunging the room into darkness. My pulse quickened, and panic started to swell again, but I forced myself to focus on the book. I needed information. "Show yourself!" I shouted into the darkness, feeling braver than I actually was. As if obliged by my command, the lights flickered back on. A figure stood before me, tall and cloaked in shadow. My heart sank. "Found you," the figure said, its presence looming. It stepped forward, illuminated by a flicker of light. I recognized the man from before, the one who had taunted me. He smirked, an unsettling glint in his eyes. "You shouldn't have let curiosity guide you here, Jake. Now you're entwined in something far beyond your understanding." His words wrapped around me like chains. I tried to think of an escape, but the walls felt like they were closing in. "What do you know about the drink?" He laughed, the sound chilling. "More than you, I assure you. You seek it, yet do you comprehend what it means? Not all truths will set you free." My mind raced, the implications of his words swirling around my head. I found myself drawn back to the warning in the book, but before I could voice my thoughts, he stepped closer. "Let me show you." In that moment, the room changed again, colors swirling and distorting. I felt like I was being pulled into a vortex, the book slipping from my fingers. Panic gripped me. I had to hold on to reality. And then everything went dark again. I was falling, surrounded by shadows, echoing laughter closing in on me. I couldn't tell where I was or what was happening. All I knew was that I was trapped, lost in a confrontation that was just beginning. I woke up gasping, sitting on a hard surface. It was dark, and the air smelled damp and cold. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of my surroundings. Was I still in that room, or had I entered another realm altogether? I rubbed my eyes and squinted, attempting to find a point of reference. Gradually, I made out the walls, forming a circle around me. They were rough, made of stone, and covered in a strange moss that glowed faintly. I glanced down and found myself sitting on the ground, still unsure of how I'd gotten here. Then I heard it, a faint whispering, like 1,000 voices overlapping, teasing at the edge of my understanding. "Jake, Jake," they called. I felt an uncanny chill travel down my spine. Those voices were familiar, but from where? I rose slowly, testing my legs. As I stood, the ground trembled slightly beneath me. I had to move. I followed the whispering, feeling an unexplainable pull towards something hidden in the shadows. My heartbeat turned frantic as I walked deeper into the darkness. Suddenly, the colors of the moss began shifting, illuminating the stone path before me. I felt hesitant, but there was no turning back. I crept forward, and that's when I saw it. A large, ornate door at the end of the tunnel. It shimmered with runes that sparked as if alive. I reached out, drawn to it. But before I could touch the door, that taunting voice echoed through the hallway. "You really think you can escape so easily?" I spun around. The cloaked figure from before materialized in front of me, grinning widely. The glint in his eyes was sharper this time, like a blade poised to strike. "You're in my domain now, Jake. Here, truths are revealed, but they can cruelly ensnare you. The air thickened again, and I struggled to breathe. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice trembling. He laughed, and this time it sounded almost jubilant. "To show you, of course. You want to uncover the truth about the forgotten elixir? Very well. But know this, every secret has its cost." As he spoke, the door behind me creaked open, revealing a blinding light. I could feel it pulling me in. It promised answers, but my gut told me to resist. "I'm not afraid of the truth," I yelled back, trying to sound stronger than I felt. "Ah, but have you prepared for what you may find?" he challenged, stepping aside as if granting me passage. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. I took a step forward, then hesitated. What lay beyond that door? Was it the answer I sought, or a trap waiting to ensnare me? That's when I heard another voice, distinct yet faint, breaking through the din. "Don't do it, Jake." It sounded like a long-lost friend, distant but urgent. My heart raced. I needed to decide. Would I take the risk of stepping into that blinding light, or would I remain here, uncertain of what came next? As the figure chuckled ominously, I realized I had to make my choice now, before it was too late. I stood there, frozen between the cloaked figure and the glowing door. The conflicting voices wrapped around me like a dense fog. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. I glanced back at the figure, his grin widening, and I could see the sharpness in his gaze growing more intense. "What happens if I don't go through?" I asked, my voice wavering. His laughter echoed off the stone walls, sending a shiver through me. "Oh, Jake, you'll be lost here forever in the shadows of your own fears. But go ahead, choose. The truth awaits." Before I could gather my thoughts, I heard the urgent plea again. "Jake, please. You can't trust him." It was the same voice, more insistent and recognizable now. It felt like a lifeline, urging me to remember something important. "Who are you?" I shouted into the darkness, hoping for an answer. "What do you want from me?" The figure's laughter faded as the air shifted. "Time is running out, Jake. Make your choice." He gestured dramatically toward the door, then back to the shadows. "Truth or eternity in uncertainty? You think you can escape me?" My mind raced back to my last days at the pub, where I'd encountered all manner of odd patrons. Each had a story, some hiding darker truths just beneath the surface. Had I stumbled into a situation like those, where everything could seem harmless but had a hidden cost? Just when I thought I might succumb to panic, I recalled a rule I followed back then. Never let fear dictate your choices. I needed to find clarity. Taking a deep breath, I focused on that voice. "I'm listening." In that moment, the whispers transformed into clearer words. "Jake, remember who you are," it urged. "Remember why you seek the truth." With a newfound determination, I stepped back from the door, shaking off the fear that threatened to drown me. "I won't let you trick me. I will find the truth, but not on your terms." The cloaked figure scowled, the playful glimmer in his eyes extinguished. "You think you have a choice? This domain feeds on uncertainty. You can't escape your fate." As he spoke those words, the ground quaked violently, and from the shadows, tendrils of darkness began to slither toward me, forming shapes that reached for my limbs. I felt a rush of adrenaline and a primal urge to flee. "Stay strong, Jake," the voice urged once more. "You must break free." With every ounce of willpower, I turned and ran back the way I came. The tendrils grabbed at my feet, but I kicked them off with urgency. The glowing moss pulsed beneath me, lighting a path as I sprinted toward the tunnel's exit. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Then, just as the darkness began to close in, I spotted something glimmering on the ground. A small, ornate key. It looked almost like the runes etched into the door. I snatched it up without thinking. If I could just make it back to that door, maybe I could unlock something more than just the way out. And then I would know the truth. As I neared the exit, the tendrils shrieked in frustration behind me. I felt their anger wash over me, but the hope ignited in my chest pushed me forward. I could feel the walls shaking as the ground rumbled beneath. Just when I thought I had escaped, a shadow loomed ahead. It wasn't the cloaked figure, but something far worse, something I had never expected. The urgency pulsed in my veins. I was deeper into this dark realm than I realized, and now it was no longer just about the truth. I had to survive. I skidded to a halt as the shadow took form. It wasn't just a trick of the light, it was a solid figure standing in my path. I recognized it instantly, a familiar face twisted in a grimace, painted with an aura of dark intent. "Pete," I breathed, shock overwhelming me. "What are you doing here?" He looked different, no longer the jovial bartender I once knew, but a menacing specter of my past. His eyes were hollow, like black holes drawing in all light. "You shouldn't have come back, Jake. You can't escape this place." I felt a chill run through me. "This isn't real. You're not real." My heart raced, pounding against my ribs as I tried to rationalize the scene before me. "Not real?" Pete laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Tell me, what is real in a world built on your fears?" He stepped forward, and the darkness around him surged, twisting at the edges like it was alive. I glanced behind me. The tendrils still threatened, pulsing with malice, waiting for their chance to ensnare me. I was trapped between the past I thought I'd escaped and the encroaching horrors. Breathing heavily, I took a step back. "Go away! This place isn't for you!" I shouted at him, finding some sliver of defiance. I couldn't let his twisted version of reality wrap around me. I remembered our conversations back at the pub, when he would tell stories that blurred the lines of truth and fiction. Those words echoed back now, taunting me. "Jake, don't you see?" he said, his voice low and taunting. "This is where my truth lies. Yours is just an illusion." My hands clenched around the key I had found. It felt warm against my skin, pulsing like a heartbeat. In that moment, I decided the key would be my salvation. I had to find that door again and use it. But how could I when Pete stood in my way? "Move!" I yelled, anger mixing with fear. I took a breath and forced myself to step around him. In an instant, he shifted, blocking my path with a predatory grace. "You really think you can just walk away?" His smile now morphed into something sinister. "You owe me, Jake. You left the pub without knowing the truth, without knowing what lies beyond that door." I felt that urgency again, a fire igniting in my chest. "No, you can't keep me here." I pushed against him, but it was like shoving against a wall. Pete's grin widened as he transformed, shadows swirling around him. He reached out, fingers elongating into dark tendrils, snaking toward me. I had to think fast. With the key gripped tightly, I made a decision. "Enough!" I yelled, the word bursting from my lips like a cannon shot. I thrust the key forward, hoping the act would break the illusion. Everything went still for a heartbeat. Then, like shattering glass, reality fractured. The darkness rippled away, and the tendrils recoiled as if burned. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and I seized the moment to dart past Pete's startled expression, hurling myself toward the glowing door. Then, just as I reached for the handle, I heard a loud crash, and the shadows surged back, more aggressive than before. "You can't leave, Jake," his voice echoed. "You will never know the truth." As the darkness rushed in, I gripped the key tightly, my heart racing. "I will know!" I shouted defiantly as I turned the key in the lock, feeling a surge of hope. But what awaited me on the other side? Would it be salvation or something far worse? I had a feeling I was about to find out. I pushed the door open, and an icy wind rushed past me. On the other side, the darkness receded slightly, revealing a dimly lit hallway lined with worn-out photographs. The faces in the frames were familiar, yet distorted, their expressions twisted in ways that made me uneasy. It was as if they were watching me with wide, judgmental eyes. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me. I felt a weight settle in my chest, and the air grew thick and suffocating. I turned back, but the door had vanished. Panic crept in, tightening my throat. For all my anger and defiance, I had no clear plan now. All I had was the key that felt heavy in my hand, a tether to the world I just fled. My heart raced as I forced myself to move forward. Each step echoed in the silence, amplifying my dread. Then I heard it. A low whisper, disembodied and drifting through the air. It was like the sound of shared secrets or stories meant to stay buried. "Jake," it called, luring me deeper into the shadows. I followed the voice against my better judgment. The hallway twisted unexpectedly, leading me to a small room with a single light bulb flickering above. Shadows danced along the walls, and in the center stood a table covered in unfamiliar objects. A clock that ticked backward, a collection of broken mirrors, and a glass jar filled with swirling mist. Curiosity overwhelmed me. While every fiber of my being screamed to turn back, I felt drawn to the jar. The mist inside writhed as if alive, pulsating with colors I could barely comprehend. I stepped closer, my heart thudding in my chest. I wanted to believe it held answers. Perhaps this was the truth Pete had spoken of. But just as I reached for the jar, the whispering intensified. "Don't touch that!" a voice warned, sharp and urgent. I froze, spinning around to face the source. There, half hidden in the shadows, was a woman. She was tall, her features obscured, but her eyes glowed with an intensity that pierced the darkness. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What do you know about this place?" She stepped forward, revealing a face etched with worry. "I've been stuck here too long, Jake. You need to leave. The mist pulls you in, and once it's got you, there's no escape." I stepped back from the table, confusion battling with instinct. "Why should I trust you? How do I know you're not part of it?" Her gaze was steady, fierce. "Because I've seen what happens to those who fall into the mist. They become part of this twisted reality. You must fight it." I felt a shiver creep down my spine as I glanced back at the jar. It was whispering now, promising visions of truth. But the woman stepped closer, urgency writ large on her face. "Jake, you can't give in. There's a way out, but you have to be strong." I hesitated, every instinct telling me to flee or fight. But her words lingered, and the mist loomed ever closer. Then, in that critical moment, I knew I had to make a choice. Trust this stranger, or succumb to the temptation of the jar. Before I could fully think it through, I grabbed the key from my pocket and raised it. "What do I do?" I shouted over the growing crescendo of whispers. "That's it! You must unlock your past to find the way out!" she yelled, her voice almost drowned out by the cacophony. As the mist reached for me, I felt the weight of the decision crash over me like a wave. I had to remember who I was, what I came from. The key trembled in my hand, and I realized I wasn't just unlocking doors, I was unlocking myself. But as I prepared to act, shadows surged from every corner of the room, and I suddenly understood that the true fight was just beginning. I clutched the key tightly, my heart racing as the shadows thickened and the whispers began to swirl around me. The woman's warning echoed in my mind as I faced the growing chaos. The mist from the jar continued to snake toward me, alive and eager, while the shadows seemed to whisper secrets of my darkest fears. "Remember," the woman shouted, her voice barely audible over the oppressive cacophony. "You have the power to break free." Taking a deep breath, I focused on the key. It felt warm, almost pulsing, like it was eager to unlock more than just a door. "What's my past?" I asked, glancing at her desperately. "What am I supposed to remember?" She stepped closer, her eyes boring into mine, filled with urgency. "You've carried your fears and doubts like ghosts, Jake. But they don't define you. Your choices do. Use the key, not just for this door, but for clarity." The shadows were shifting now, closing in, and the whispers morphed into a cacophony of uncertainty, accusing me of failure, of cowardice, of not understanding what I truly seek. but her words lit a small flame of defiance within me. I had to remember who I was without the shadow's taint. "Fight!" I shouted, remembering days spent at the Rusty Tap, the connection with customers, laughter, bonds forged over drinks. Those were the moments that mattered, blurred by the darkness now looming. They brought light. "I will not be afraid," I declared, feeling a surge of determination. The jar's promise of truth felt enticing, but I wouldn't let it dictate my reality any longer. Instead, I turned and faced the shadows head-on. Emboldened, I plunged the key into the air, imagining it unlocking not just doors, but fear itself. "I will find my truth, my way out," I shouted as the shadows writhed and recoiled from my certainty. As if triggered by my burst of determination, a powerful wave of light erupted from the key, illuminating the room. The mist retreated, and the shadows dissolved into tendrils of smoke, hissing away. The whispers quieted into an echo, fading into the ether until I found myself standing in a sanctuary of peace, still holding the glowing key. The woman looked on in wonder. "You've done it!" she exclaimed. "You've severed their hold." For a moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. But the door at the back of the room remained closed, its surface marked with ancient patterns I'd never noticed before. I remembered the warnings. The truth came with consequences. "Now what do I do?" I asked, my voice wavering slightly. The echoes of laughter tickled at the edges of my mind, reminding me that this wasn't over yet. "The door holds your answer," she urged, stepping aside. Before I could second-guess myself, I approached the door. The key thrummed in my palm, almost guiding me toward it. With one last deep breath, I placed the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a blinding light that felt like the dawn breaking over a dark horizon. I stepped through, heart pounding, unsure of what awaited me. The world shifted again, surrounding me in a cascade of colors, fragments of memories flashing before my eyes. Laughter at the bar, late-night philosophical debates with Pete, the warmth of connection with those who crossed my path. Each scene glimmered, woven together with strands of truth I had almost forgotten, moments that shaped me. But in the center of it all stood the specter of choice. "What will you do now?" echoed a voice, not just from behind the shadows, but within myself. I realized that even in this moment of clarity, the future remained shrouded in uncertainty, the answer only lying in the roads I would decide to travel. The colors began to blur once more, pulling me back. I was back in the Rusty Tap, night still lingering in the corners, the ghosts of choices behind the bar still watching. But now I felt different, more whole, yet aware that shadows could return if I let fear guide me again. I stepped forward, a newfound energy surging within me. I could see the patrons again, but now I understood them on a deeper level. Individuals woven together by shared stories, lost moments, and unspoken truths. As I served them their drinks, I still thought about what I had just experienced. The threats in that shadowy corridor lingered, leaving questions unanswered. What was real? Did Pete ever escape? Would the darkness follow me into this life? I moved through the night, and even as laughter echoed, I couldn't shake the feeling that part of me remained tethered to that world. I left a light on in my heart, just in case. With each pour, I learned to embrace the ambiguity, accept the shadows and the light, knowing the challenge was not just remembering who I was, but choosing who I would become. And just like that, I returned to the rhythm of the bar, trying to find balance in a dance that was far from over. I had escaped the shadows, but I knew they could always return.